In a recent interview, the director of Bones and All, Luca Guadagnino, shared how both Zendaya and Timothée Chalamet gave him a behind-the-scenes sneak peek at the new Dune 2 set. Not just that, but Timothée also opened up about his upcoming film, Bones and All. But is Dune 2 going to be able to live up to the hype and improve? And is Bones and All just about cannibalism? Let's look into it. Starting with, Guadagnino visits the Dune set. Bones and All, a film by Timothée Chalamet and Luca Guadagnino, just came out in theaters on the 18th of November. It's the second time the two have worked together after 2017's Call Me By Your Name, which brought worldwide recognition and critical acclaim for both professionals. His new film with Zendaya is scheduled to come out in August 2023, just next year. In an interview with Rotten Tomatoes, the director shares the story of how he got the chance to visit the set of Dune 2 in Budapest along with both stars Chalamet and Zendaya. He also expressed just how amazed he was by the sheer scale of it all, saying that it was remarkable in its excellent craft. Chalamet then joked that the director tried to etch his name on one of the helicopters, but they wouldn't allow him to do that. Since the director went to Budapest to meet up with both stars since they were working on ADR for Zendaya's upcoming film Challengers, as they did in the interview background, the director then went into the backlot and saw a massive set for Dune. As he entered, he couldn't help but touch everything, including the helicopter, which made him see how incredible their work was. Moreover, Denis Villeneuve's commitment to craftsmanship is a key to Dune's success. The highly anticipated sequel for Dune first started filming back in July. It starts exactly where the first film left off and will continue to follow the story of Paul Atreides as he figures out more about the people who destroyed House Atreides. The film will also see him reunite with his love interest, Chani, and the Fremen. Since the films are backed by solid source material straight from the novels, fans are eager to see more of what made the first film such a huge success. However, a large chunk of the credit goes to the film's director, producer, and screenwriter, Denis Villeneuve. Famously known works by him include films like Blade Runner 2049 and Arrival. The director blends in full stories with sweeping effects to take his viewers into a completely different world full of science fiction features. That, along with his carefully planned balance between narrative, visuals, and characterization, was one of the most significant talking points of the first film. All of that combined made a simmering tension we could feel through Paul's visions and his house's fall. As a surprise to no one, the film was named one of the year's top 10 films by the National Board of Review and the American Film Institute, but the sequel has a lot riding on it since its success will confirm whether we'll see an entire trilogy or if more adaptations from the books will come along. The director is also interested in working on the Dune Messiah book. Lastly, what we know about Zendaya's role in Dune 2. If Guadagnino's interview tells us anything, the second part will be just as good as the first one. In addition, the upcoming sequel promises that we'll see more of a character who previously lacked screen time. The character is, of course, Zendaya's Chani, who will play a much more significant role this time. The director, Denis Villeneuve, has confirmed that Chani will be the female lead of the series, and this time she has a much more prominent role than in the first film. She's not just going to be another Fremen warrior, but will also be fighting alongside Paul in his war against the Harkonnens. Other than that, the character is also a big part of Paul's story as his love interest, taking the film into a classic heroes trope where he has to decide between avoiding a disastrous fate from happening to the universe that only he can see or choosing the love of his life. Dune is now set on fixing the only real issue we can point out from the first one, that Chani didn't have that big of a role, but the sequel is covering up the novel's remainder, and Chani is a big part of that, especially during the spice battle of Arrakis. Part 2 will continue filming in Budapest, Italy, Abu Dhabi, and Jordan, and along with Chalamet and Zendaya, many of the first film's cast came back, such as Florence Pugh, Austin Butler, and Christopher Walken, but it looks like many new faces are joining in as well. Timothée Chalamet talks about playing a cannibal in Bones and All. Coming up, Timothée Chalamet talks about the film. Despite all the gore we see on the screen that can sometimes turn the film into a horror film, it's a love story. In a recent interview with SFX, one with many layers, the actor touched on the movie's primary themes. He was asked how he interprets his characters and Russell's need to feed on humans. For the actor, the cannibalism part was more of a metaphor for what is left for you by your ancestors or even your immediate parents. But at the same time, it talks about the trauma they lived with over multiple generations. We all wrestle with that. Sometimes, it's a thing that we can work through and overcome, ultimately breaking the cycle, but at other times, it's just a curse that will always be there. A blemish will always be a blemish. Though for him, at least during the film's production, it felt more like a metaphor for addiction, especially younger people who suffer from addiction are still learning about the rudimentary things about themselves. It also talks about what it's like to be in love, what being in a relationship is like, and what it's like to support someone who's in one. Moving on to the other interpretation, Chalamet prefers the other interpretation of the film much more. He says, while still trying to avoid any spoilers, that love can lift a person, but at the same time, lift you to eventually crush you again. Sometimes those demons never go away. When asked if the film felt a bit like Bonnie and Clyde or Badlands, he replied that the two were a massive inspiration for the film. Whenever he thinks about the two films, he realizes that their acting style is much more direct. This way, the film felt much more old-fashioned, but more than that, it inspired them. Before the film, the actor hadn't seen Badlands, but as soon as he did, he was immediately profoundly invested in all the characters. Additionally, Luca Guadagnino opens up about the film. The film's director, Luca Guadagnino, talks about how Taylor was his first option since he was super impressed by her performance in Trey Schultz's Waves. The Call Me By Your Name director, during an interview with Total Film about his latest film Bones and All, in the magazine's latest issue, said that during the call he found out about Taylor, who's a beautiful person. Not only that, but he realized that she was also super bright. He then called her back after a few days and told her it was hers to take if she was interested in the role. The director knew that both actors would have incredible chemistry on the screen together. He also said that as long as he's innovative and knows things like that, he feels like he will be able to do an excellent job filmmaking. But the second, his instincts start to die and he plans to retire, but thankfully we're far away from that, especially since Bones and All have gotten excellent reviews and Russell and Chalamet have been acclaimed for their performance in the film as cannibals who fall in love with each other. The original YA novel by Camille DeAngelis says that the plot can be very gory, grubby, and possibly even off-putting as the two characters crouch over bodies with blood dripping. Finally, is the film about cannibalism? Guadagnino went on to talk about how Call Me By Your Name, for him, was mainly about the transmission of knowledge from one person to another as much as it was about Elio's being of desire coming to life. Elio learns from his father and his mother from people, but with Bones and All, it's more about the ability to transmit knowledge in the confines of living such a violent life along with the kind of brutality people had to face during the Reagan-era's disenfranchisement. Ultimately, the director doesn't think that the subject of the film is cannibalism, but instead it's about loneliness, abandonment, being different from everyone but still seeking companionship, and eventually to be left behind. Those were the dynamics the director was more interested in. He wasn't there to speculate or judge on anything, but instead he was there to tell the story of one individual. And that's a wrap for this video. What are your thoughts about the upcoming Dune sequel? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.